online home, whether it be at Contently or on Facebook or on LinkedIn or on your own website. So you know that's the strategy. Assemble your content. You know, the list of places where you've worked, the list of work that you've published, the areas of your expertise, as John Hodgman would say, all of your samples, and then find a place to put them where you're most comfortable uploading them, or hire someone to do it for you, and then spread the word about your online presence. You know, I just want to add to all of this, when using any online service, use a very good password. We've had a pretty large rash of break-ins to big websites. I know LinkedIn's password list was compromised. It's important to use a different password for every website that you use, because when one password cache gets compromised, whoever steals the password checks every service on the internet and can break into your email. So just, I always want to caution people to be careful with their passwords. So I think, you know, social media is going to be the way that people find your profile.
From there. Thank you, Sean. That was great. What I'd like to do is get some sense of, you know, how to pitch this in terms of level of familiarity. So I'm just curious, in listening to Sean. Let's start at this kind of base level. Can we just see how many people are on Facebook? That'll be easy. That'll be just about everybody. Yeah. Except for Dan. Everyone's up for Dan. or he's not one to put up his hand. I guess. Just kidding. Right.
How many
how about now and on LinkedIn? Is it good? Good. Very good. Great. Okay. And Twitter. Do you have people have Twitter accounts? Really? Great. Okay. Impressive. Very good. And how many now have your own, separate from those accounts, have your own webpage? Separate from those? Okay. Good. And how many have blogs? Okay. Fewer. Okay. Good. But a lot of hands staying up there. Okay, Google profiles, not Google Plus, but a Google profile. You've actually set up a Google profile? Or a few, yeah, fewer. Interesting, okay, we'll come back to that. Good, so those gives me some sense. Let me, make sure I have something to pass around. I think we can start there. We need to get around, and I think there are 18 or so which. There is a, so the question then is, once you have these accounts, I mean, all right, so then the question is, how satisfied is everyone with what you've done, with what you've set up, that you really are satisfied that, you know, it's really working and you're actually getting employment from your social media presence or from your presence online? Wow, so few hands. Okay, well that's why you're here, because this is clearly a working lunch, because so few you're eating. You must be very intense.
Except for LinkedIn.
Yes. Sorry?
Except for LinkedIn.
You're satisfied with LinkedIn, if that's working for you.
Some things from LinkedIn.
Okay, good. That's great. Good to know. Yeah. There should be enough if it keeps going around. I think there were fewer than 18 people here, and there are 18.
No, we ran out halfway through.
I need to more than one. No, I put it down to 20 and I had one. So, okay. All right, we can send, send cards around, and then if you didn't get one, I can certainly send you one more. And what I'm eager to have is, of course, to have questions. So we can start with LinkedIn then, so many of you are on LinkedIn. Because that is, and there it's a matter of that there are, I think most people know kind of what LinkedIn is. There, it's a matter of getting your profile set up. The important thing I want to emphasize, I suppose, is that you want to have some sort of central place where you're sending any kind of traffic. And so you need to decide kind of what that is. If you have a page, then ideally that's the page. And then people who are discovering you, whether it's on LinkedIn or Facebook or anything else, you should be directing them back to the centralized page, because that's where you're going to close with them essentially, or lead them to your the portfolio of your work. One of the interesting new developments that LinkedIn has made available now is that you can link. There's a new application, new app. I don't know whether you're all aware that LinkedIn has now enabled apps. It's one of the things you can go to on the page where you click to go to an app. And one of the apps is you can link to your own creative portfolio. So if you have a portfolio of your work, there's a way of linking that so it actually is part of your LinkedIn profile. So people can easily get to that. The idea is everyone is impatient on the web, even employers. And so if there's any reason why you wouldn't, if they can find a reason not to hire you, they'll go on to the kind of next person. So you don't want to give them a reason to sort of move on. You'd like to have everything be kind of centralized there. And that's where I think the first person they would start, if you think about how people employ, would be you're looking for someone to write on a certain topic. If you do a Google search, are they going to find your page? And that's where I get to the point of a Google profile. Google has enabled you to set up a separate profile, and you can incorporate all your other profiles into that. That's called a Google profile. That's separate from your Google dashboard, which is another thing that's relatively recent. If you just, you can just Google dashboard. No one else will see it, but with Google dashboard, it behooves you to spend some time with that if you haven't already looked. How many know about the Google dashboard? Who knows about Google dashboard? Yeah. Google dashboard tells you everything Google knows about you. That would include if you have an Android phone, where you've checked in on Foursquare, your current, if you enable GPS location, where you currently are. It is in some ways frightening how much Google knows about you, and in fact, but the point of the dashboard is you can actually set it up so that you can manage. You can delete your browsing history. That if you're using your Chrome browser, not that Google is going to have access to your history of where you've been on the web, what videos you've seen on YouTube. If you checked in and used your Google ID to view videos on YouTube, that'll all be kind of tracked. And this is information that's available to Google so that they can find you using any of the number of different marketing devices that Google has available to it, which includes AdWords, AdSense. And the point is Google enjoys data. So they like all these points. So I would say if you look at your Google dashboard, then the idea is the thing you have most control over is your Google profile, because that's the first thing that, in using search terms, Google would find. So the important thing, and this I didn't put on the sheet so much, but if you're setting up a page, you want to optimize it so that the things that your area of expertise, and I'm presuming that since many of you are writers who are looking for it, you have some area of expertise, you want to be sure the terms that you would want someone to use to find you is on your page, that you want people, where you want people to find you. It seems kind of obvious, but people don't often think about that. If you're writing about technology, history, gardening, crafts, you want that to be certainly evident on your profile and should be repeated across the different places, whether it's Twitter, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Google+. People on Google Plus is raising, or how many people have accounts on Google Plus? Yeah, fewer, which isn't surprising. More people, there was a recent study, more people are happier with Google Plus than on Facebook, but dramatically fewer people are on Google Plus, of course. The important thing about Google Plus is that Google so much wants you to start an account on Google Plus that they are going to reward you by improving your search results if you have an account on Google Plus. So that's by itself is a reason to basically set up a Google Plus account. And if you've set up accounts elsewhere on LinkedIn, whatever, you already have the information you need to set that up. There are, it's actually you have fewer words to kind of play with things there. But the idea is, for those of you, particularly if you've written books, and if you link to some of your book pages, once you set up an account, within a short period of time after you set up a Google Plus account, you will find that just on your general Google results, there will be a page which is what there is now, Google is now calling your knowledge graph, and that will appear on the right-hand side of the Google search results, and you'll see that if there's, if you have a Wikipedia entry about yourself, that will show, it'll give preference to that. but your Google profile and any images of your books will show up as part of your Google Graph. Now, that's so, Google is eager to encourage you to use these elements that they've set up for themselves. The difficulty, of course, is there really still aren't that many of your friends and people on Google Plus, so you're less likely to spend a lot of time there. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it, except to say that's the case. There are people who do use it, and if you have a community, particularly in the technology sector, there certainly are a lot of great conversations happening on Google Plus in technology. And there are many more publishing houses now that are setting up Google Plus accounts, but you don't find, so there isn't that much that's going on from a conversation standpoint. Of course, that's not the case with Facebook, where there's a lot of photos and things being shared there. As Sean had said, Twitter is kind of the killer app these days in terms of both starting conversations, promoting yourself, driving traffic to your blog. It is a very powerful way of building your brand. And I guess the question there is, if people finding that they, and one of the questions there is, and this is again, it's part of, I would say, if you're trying to sell a book now, a lot of the questions that editors would ask as you present your proposal is, well, what kind of platform are you bringing to the table? Do you have a following? And the way they engage in that is a combination of a number of different things. It's how many connections you have on LinkedIn, how many friends you have on Facebook, how many followers you have on Twitter. Google Plus probably not so much. Followers on Twitter is an interesting issue. What surprises me often in the case is that if you want to get followers on Twitter, there's one basic rule: you have to follow people. I'm amazed on people I talk to who don't kind of get that, because they think, well, I'm tweeting X many times a day and not getting a lot of reaction. Well, then you say they have 100 followers. You're not going to get a reaction because you really need more followers. There are tools you can use to find people to follow. Many people, particularly some of the people with lots of followers, often have automated the following, so that if you follow them, you will automatically get a follower. Now, those are not going to be what I would call earned followers, because they're less likely to have that much interest in what you're saying. What you want to do is get the earned followers, and there are a number of different strategies to do that. It involves spending some time. One is, of course, if in fact you is to appreciate, is to follow people who have a similar interest and appreciate what they do, and that is by retweeting people that you follow that you enjoy what they're doing, retweeting it. And if someone has the good grace to retweet you, it really is amazing how much they enjoy being thanked for doing that. More than likely, it will increase the chances that you're going to have someone follow you if, in fact, you thank them for retweeting, or even thank them for following. In many cases, there are people who will follow you, and there are a couple of automated programs where you find that if you don't follow them within 3 days, they're going to stop following you. They have no interest in you. It basically is an automated program. They're using some kind of bot to follow you. It's very kind of sad. But it's kind of the nature of the beast, and so, and probably if you really want to introduce a lot of sadness into your social media life, I don't really know if you want to, I would say subscribe to Twitter, because Twitter actually will tell you who has stopped following you on a bi-weekly basis. And the saddest thing, of course, is if it's someone you know, and so you say, well, what? And they'll kind of say, this person stopped following you. You can almost track it back to what you said that led them to someone to stop following you. Now, what I've discovered, though, is that, in fact, Twitter is not a perfect universe. If I believe the people who have stopped following me, who I've kind of said, is there a reason why you stopped following me? You have to be kind of bold and rude. Sometimes say, I had no idea that I stopped following. If I believe them, and other people have said, Twitter does on occasion just unfollow people arbitrarily from you. It is disturbing that happens, but it does happen, so you can find that. But it's actually better for your ego if you use Twitter to find that, that sometimes people don't know that they've stopped following you because they've been automated. Some bot is occasionally stop following you. Now, the important